What's up? What's up? This is an under construction special. Today we woke up to some news that Mr. Marty Hurney, the two-term Carolina Panthers general manager, was relieved of his duties today.
David Thanos.
Snap it real quick. Some people were relieved. On Panthers Twitter, I saw somebody wrote a damn near essay about Marty Hurney being let go, and some people are just confused at the timing. Jamal, how do you feel about Hurney being let go at this point?
Man, believe it or not, man, I don't hate it and I don't love it. The timing is really just weird. Kaz is jumping on right on time. What's up, brother?
What's good, y'all?
I was just telling Rodney, man, the timing of the firing of Marty Hurney is just puzzling. There's 2 weeks left in the season, and let me say this: when I first saw the news this morning, my first question was, what was David Tepper expecting out of this season? Because all season, my thinking was, if it is understood that you are going through a year where you are retooling, rebuilding, whatever fancy word you want to use, conventional wisdom would tell you that Hurney has a longer lease in that situation. We saw now that definitely was not the case. So my first question again was, well, what did you expect? The team won 4 games. It's probably one more than a lot of people thought we'd win. So I just, before we start really digging and researching as far as the reasons why he was let go, I didn't get it. That was my first reaction. Like, why? What? It honestly seemed a little hasty when I first heard it.
Kaz, what do you think about it, man?
Yeah, so I was wrong on this because we talked about it briefly in a episode earlier, and I said I didn't think that I felt like they were going to give Hurney. I felt like they were going to give Hurney, like one more season. But, it's not uncommon in the NFL for GMs to be let go before the end of the season. And when you have a season like this, there has to be a scapegoat. This is the third losing season in a row, and I know it's a rebuild, but Hurney has been the GM for every one of those seasons. But I'm not certain it was a performance reason that Tepper let Hurney go. Like he said on his Twitter statement, it was time for a change. He wanted someone that was more analytics driven, whereas Marty Hurney's first draft pick was in 2002. So, he's an old.
I think 98, maybe.
Yeah, maybe older than that. I know. Well, he drafted Julius Peppers for the Panthers, his first year as GM for us after Bill Polian left. So, he is an old school traditional GM. And I think, Tepper, one of these new young owners, I think that he was just like, hey, we want, something newer, more analytics driven. Although analytics in the NFL doesn't lend itself to the NFL as much as it does in the NBA and Major League Baseball. But I kind of feel for Hurney. But, someone had to fall on the sword this year, and I think it was him.
Yeah, but why? But why, Kaza? Like, is this one of those I'm a billionaire and I want what I want right now type of things where somebody's got to get fired? Like, here's my question. Here's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is he just firing somebody just to fire somebody? I guess that's what I'm asking, man.
Well, I feel like he did that with Ron Rivera, and we still don't know the whole situation with Cam, but he kind of Tepper's always been like, hey, we want to kind of wipe away everything that has to do with the old Carolina Panthers. This is not just a new team, but a completely new franchise and business organization. They moved the headquarters to a completely different town. The headquarters is now 30 miles away in another state. He's coming in, he's talking about building a new stadium, which is great, but there's nothing but change since Tepper took over. And I think this is just more of that. I think the only reason Hurney is even GM is because he wasn't happy with the job Dave Gettleman was doing. So he went with something familiar. So
I got you.
So guys, I'm gonna read some numbers to you. and tell me what you think. 15 years, 3 playoff appearances, 1 Super Bowl appearance, 238 total games, 106 wins, 132 losses, 44% win percentage. If you had a GM that did that, what would you call it?
Well, let me take this because I just discussed this in another Facebook Carolina sports group. Those numbers are skewed because if we recall,
get out my head, Kaiser.
Yeah, after EJ Emanuel threw a last-second touchdown to put the Panthers 2 games in the hole way back in 2012, Marty Hurney got fired the next game. What happened that year? The Panthers went to the playoffs and won the division. The next season, they had a losing record, but they won the division. And then the next season, they go 15-1 and go to the Super Bowl. That was a team Marty Hurney built. He was fired before he could really see what he had built come to fruition. So now the Panthers are a good team. We're a perennial playoff team. We win the division 3 straight times, which had never been done before. We go to the Super Bowl. We have this great run, and he doesn't get to count those as his accomplishments because technically he wasn't the GM. Dave Gettleman was. His track record would look a lot better if he had been the GM during those years. And to be fair, that was his team. David Gettleman added some decent pieces, but the core of that team, Greg Olsen, Cam Newton, Luke Kuechly, and Thomas Davis, that was Hurney's team. And so they fire him, and then the Panthers have this 3-4 years of prosperity, and then when they suck again, they fire the guy they replaced him with and bring him back, and then expect him to work magic. That's why I think those. If you look at Hurney's or the team's history while Hurney was GM, it's a little deceiving.
Yeah. Again, Kaiser, get out my head, man. You stole a lot of my thunder. But what I was going to kind of say, not as articulate as Kaiser put it, man. But look at the division we're in. We are in the NFC South. The NFC South has been an absolute dogfight for the last 15 years, notwithstanding the Bucks, who just got good this year. But just to kind of give us some context, Thomas Dimitroff, who just got fired, it took him 12 years to get fired for the Atlanta Falcons GM job. So you kind of, I put that into context to kind of say it's understandable why GMs in the NFC South get a longer leash than other GMs do, which is kind of why I feel like the numbers you just presented are a little bit skewed because of the competition that we have to face each year. Now, if we're Jacksonville and we have those numbers, then of course it probably took way too long to get rid of them. But in this particular situation, man, the numbers are what they are, but they don't tell the whole story as well.
So guys, Panthers Wire released an article stating the 10 reasons why Marty Hurney got fired. I'm going to read them.
Trash. I know. See, this is why we can be like, we're not journalists. Because if I was a journalist, I would do the journalist integrity. I wouldn't criticize another journalist article. But I'm just a fan with a podcast.
So we can give them that smoke.
Trash article. Trash.
So I'm going to read them off to you. Number 10, no new deal for Curtis Samuel. 9. No new deal for Taylor Moton. 8. The size of Shaq Thompson's extension, which has some merit to it. The timing of the Christian McCaffrey contract, which is number 7. 6. Letting James Bradbury leave. 5. The Rashawn Golden pick. 4. Trading up for Greg Little, 2019. 3. The Will Grier pick, 2019. 2, the length of the Bridgewater deal. And number 1, the releasing of Cam Newton. Number 1 in particular, I don't know who was completely behind the releasing of Cam and how that happened. So
I can tell you.
Comment on that.
Let me say this, man. Look, when these kind of Bleacher Report articles come out when it comes to the Hornets, we always say this. Hindsight The hindsight glasses always fit. They fit every single time you put the hindsight glasses on. Some of these moves on this list are inconsequential, in my opinion. Like Curtis Samuel not having a new deal is not a big deal right now. It's really not. That's just kind of that's fluff.
Nobody's giving Curtis Samuel a deal. What has he shown
Seriously
for us to think that he's deserving of a deal?
Well, he's shown us that he's not the training camp MVP. Ooh, big deal. Let's give him $10 million a year based off that. But again, these type of articles, man, they don't really give you full context. It's just a list. Nobody's saying Marty Hurney was perfect. You're not gonna be perfect. No GM is. The Rashawn Golden thing looks really bad. I'm not gonna lie. We're passed up on the defensive end that's playing for the Saints right now, who's killing it. We could have had him and Chin on the same defense, but again, it's hindsight, and we can't say that we were looking at it beforehand. So it's just kind of cheap to really focus on that right now, honestly.
So guys, I'm gonna transition to Mr. Tepper. So I'm gonna read this quote to you. The question was, with a possible top 5 pick in the 2021 draft on the horizon, who would have the final say on the pick? Mr. Tepper said, I think it should be the GM with a lot of talk with the head coach and some potentially input from me. Sometimes I may just have to be the tiebreaker, but I think it should be collaborative. What was your first thought on that quote?
Matt Rule is going to be the new GM of the Carolina Panthers. Because, okay, consider why did Tepper bring Matt Rule in? There's a very specific reason he picked Matt Rule. And that's because Matt Rule had a history in college of turning around bad programs. But as we know, in college, a college head coach is essentially the GM of the team. He recruits people with his staff. He says, these are the guys I want. He makes all of the personnel decisions. It is his team. It's not like that in the NFL. In fact, the coach very rarely makes personnel decisions as far as the composition of the team. Essentially, the GM does, and the coach does what he can with those players. I don't think that works for Matt Rule. It wouldn't shock me if Matt Rule went to Tepper and said, I can't build a team, nothing against Hurney, but I can't build a team with players that I don't pick. And we talked about this with Teddy Bridgewater. There's no chemistry there. I don't think Teddy was Matt Rule's guy, honestly. Based on this firing and everyone we hear every week, I don't think Teddy was his guy. And I think Matt Rule's like, hey, now one of our people in chat said Matt Rule came out and says he doesn't want to be the GM, but things change in the NFL. I mean, they change very, very quickly. And there was talk, there's rumors that Matt Rule was very, very involved in the draft process. A lot of people are saying Jeremy Chin was his pick and Marty Hurney wanted Isaiah Simmons. Now, based on the interviews after the draft, I don't get that. Hurney made it sound like he was wheeling and dealing to be able to move up to pick Chin. But if that's true, even a little bit, it wouldn't surprise me if Matt Rule was given more executive control over the personnel.
Jamal, what about that quote stood out to you?
I'll tell you the first thing I thought of when I saw the quote, but I also want to kind of, I guess, challenge what Kaza said as well. The first thing I thought when I saw that was, boy, if Michael Jordan would have said something like that, oh, holy hell. Oh, my God. Charlotte would have lost their damn mind if Michael Jordan would have said something like that. But anywho, as far as Matt Rule and how much control that he's ultimately going to have going forward. Now, on one hand, you look at how much money he's making, and David Tepper is perfectly within his right to be like, look, man, you're getting paid a lot of money. You need to go ahead and handle the GM duties too, bro. But with that being said, right. But with that being said, man, I've also seen similar reports saying that Matt Rule doesn't, he's not a fan of also being the GM as well. They're already talking about candidates to replace Marty Hurney, man. But I do think Matt Rule is probably going to be the biggest voice in the room, even though they're going to hire a GM.
go ahead. Finish.
No, go ahead, Kaza.
No, I was going to say, I could see Tepper splitting the duties, saying, you, whoever we bring in, you are the money guy. Matt Rule is the personnel guy. We've seen NFL.
Which ultimately, I think that is probably what got Hurney fired. I don't think it's being stated a lot. I really don't. I don't think they're really harping on that. But I want to look. I actually want to point out one of our followers said, and this was a damn good point, man. He was saying that, when we're so caught in this retool, rebuilding thing, but we don't have any money to spend. And it's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense theoretically. And I think that some of the challenges or some of the faults that Marty Hurney kind of presented itself. You know what I mean? So that may have been a real key as to why Marty Hurney doesn't have a job now.
We're kind of go ahead.
Guys, I'm thinking that Tepper wants somebody younger and somebody that kind of meshes better with Rule and just kind of sees things his way and can bring that analytical balance plus the old school approach to everything. He wants everybody to be on the same page.
I agree with that.
To me, this shows that maybe Marty was kind of too rigid with some things, and they just didn't agree with some of his choices.
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying, man, because, as far as what Tepper's been saying all day, he's literally had to stop himself from saying old school every other sentence he was describing Marty Hurney. He was like, well, I don't want to say old school, but, yeah. And I mean, he's alluded to the fact that he wants
Marty
somebody
in the water, dude.
But as far as what Tepper was saying, man, I mean, he made it pretty clear, man. He wants to go in this analytical direction. He didn't necessarily hate how Marty Hurney did things, but he just wasn't on the same page as him and Rule. So,
it's hard though, because Marty Hurney, if you look at pure talent evaluation, Marty Hurney in the last decade brought 4 future Hall of Famers to the Panthers, at least 3. You got Cam Newton, Luke Kuechly, and Greg Olsen. Those 3 guys are going to wear jackets. They're going to wear jackets.
You sure
they are, Rodney.
We sure about Cam. Look, I love Cam, but we sure about Cam.
Cam Newton, if he retired at the end of the season, would wear a jacket one day. I don't see how he wouldn't.
I don't see how he wouldn't, man.
I don't see how he wouldn't. All the records that he's broken.
Bash Ty agrees with me. We don't see it.
I don't see how you could not. He's not going to be a first ballot guy because he didn't win the Super Bowl. But you have a guy who, for a short period of time, was as dominant as Cam Newton has done, and has done something no quarterback really has ever done. That bodes well for him. But even if he doesn't make the Hall of Fame, I mean, Cam Newton at one time was the best player in the entire league. And then you got Luke Kuechly, you got Greg Olsen, you had Thomas Davis, and then if you go back to the Julius Peppers, Ryan Khalil, Jordan Gross. I mean, all pro after all pro after all pro. And the knock on Hurney has always been, well, look at that's it's easy to pick well in the first round. Is it? But
is it?
Yeah, I know, right? Is it really? But it's like, what does he do in the later rounds? Somebody please name these teams that is just stocked full of talent that they picked up in the 3rd round beyond. It doesn't happen in the NFL.
But you know what, Kaza? Coincidentally, when it comes to Marty Hurney picking all this great talent in the 1st round, it's kind of like he's kind of, in a way, he's kind of created his own problem simply because how do you pay these guys all the time? He has constantly had the good problem of having to balance exactly who he has to pay because these guys are so talented. Which is
there's one big knock on Hurney. He pays the wrong people.
Yeah, right.
Because we couldn't keep
Chris McCaffrey.
James Bradbury. Well, not necessarily McCaffrey, because I think there's no team that would have let McCaffrey go. There isn't a single team in the NFL that
You did not have to pay him right now.
There's not a single team in the NFL that wouldn't have paid that man his money. It just wouldn't have happened.
Now, Rodney, I agree with that. I don't think they had to pay him at that moment. They could have had at least flexibility for another season if they just would have held off.
Era was the linchpin. Because if you wait, because that was the next big deal. Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, very similar back. The Saints were waiting on what we were going to do to see what the market was, and we were waiting on what the Saints were going to do with Kamara. That was a weird timing situation. But I'm talking more so about like the Teddy Bridgewater deal. We're locked into Teddy, and I think everyone's kind of like, I don't know if Teddy's that guy. But we got to pay this man $40 million the next 2 years.
Yeah,
we certainly remember. We certainly remember D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, and although those guys were great for us, them cats was getting paid $35 million 10 years ago.
Right.
Marty Hurney. James Bradbury should be a Carolina Panther, but we couldn't pay him. You think all the guys that we had to let go so that we could pay whoever. Shaq.
But again, I mean, even with the James Bradbury thing, it's a hindsight game again, man. You know what I mean? I mean, it's easy for us to come over here and say, "Oh man, you should have paid Bradbury." Keep in mind, Bradbury did want a lot of money, and Shaq Thompson's deal was a bit more suitable, not by much, but
I don't know. I'll say this though. I mean, Shaq Thompson has had a interesting season.
Yeah.
I think James,
that's a nice diplomatic way to put it.
I think James Bradbury would have been more important to our defense this year than Shaq Thompson. I know it doesn't seem that way, and you're right. Hindsight glasses a little bit. But I think they were banking on Shaq Thompson to be that leader for the young defense. James Bradbury's never been like a real super vocal guy.
Quiet guy, very quiet.
Yeah. But, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. He's not like a shutdown corner, but I'll put him on an island with Julio Jones and see,
I mean, he's proven himself. I mean, this is a tough. This is a very tough division to be a good cornerback, man. He's proven himself.
Right, and it just now we're without him, and we're kind of I don't want to say stuck with Shaq Thompson, but now he really needs to take a big leap next season, and this is the season that he should have taken that leap.
Right, no doubt.
So guys, I have a question. Tepper said one of the reasons why they didn't fire Hurney last year was because of the transition of power from Richardson to him. And this quote stood out to me. The student has to become the teacher. What do you think about that?
Marty Hurney is a great guy. That's all I'm going to say. Marty Hurney is one hell of a guy to sign up for this job. I often say, man, optics matter. And if I'm a GM that's not hired right now, and I got some options, for different teams, I'm kind of giving the Carolina Panthers a side eye right now, man.
Don't steal my thunder. I got another question later.
All right, I won't go that far, man. But it's just man, there's not a lot of GM jobs in the NFL. You got to take what you can get, man. But if I'm Marty Hurney, I'm just like, that's kind of setting him up for failure, man.
So you wasn't feeling David Tepper Jones's comment?
Nah, bro. I'm not feeling that at all, man. No, sir.
Jerry Tepper Jones.
Well, which is even more reason why this just feels. It just feels weird. It just does. Like if Hurney wasn't your guy to begin with, man. Just start fresh. Right. Just start completely fresh if he wasn't your guy to begin with.
So guys, there is essentially 6 GM openings right now. You got Houston, Carolina, Jacksonville, Detroit, Atlanta, and the football team in Washington. Like, where do you rank our opportunity on that schedule?
Panthers got to be number 1 on that list. Maybe Houston. The Panthers are not the Hornets. The Panthers, of all the teams you name, who's the best out of all those teams? Who's got the most potential out of all those teams?
I would say if you want to be To me, if Jacksonville has that number one pick and Trevor Lawrence is who you think he is, that's number one. Houston already has the quarterback in place. That's number two, off rip. Carolina, Washington, toss up.
Well, so the thing is, Houston and Jacksonville in the same division, for one, a generally historically weak division compared to the NFC South. So those would be attractive options. But realistically, even historically, the Panthers, even in this last decade, have been better team than the Texans and the Jaguars. Plus, Houston is, of course, the largest market out of those teams, but in the NFL, where you play doesn't seem to have as much influence in attracting free agents as it does in the NBA. I just feel like if you look at what the Panthers are doing, they have a promising defense. They have some tools on offense. You get to come into a team that will probably have the number 4th pick. I think that's a good situation. It's certainly a better situation than Washington, I think. Also, the owner is a big, big thing. Now, Jacksonville's owner is shown that he's willing to spend money, but he's not like a football guy. He's just a guy with a fan with a lot of money. Tepper is a football guy, I think. Tepper, came from a successful organization, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he wants to rebuild Carolina in that image. That bodes very well if you're a GM. The only bad thing is that your leash might be short.
You think? I mean,
this will be the 3rd GM in 2 seasons or 3 years since Tepper took over. Gettleman, Hurney, and then whoever.
Well, no, actually, no. Gettleman was fired under Richardson.
Yeah.
He was fired.
Oh, you're right. Absolutely, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Rodney, sometimes you ask questions that I don't directly answer right away. So here's one of them that I'm not going to directly answer right away. Because on one hand, if you look at historically who has been the better franchise over the past, 10, 15 years, go to Carolina Panthers. But on the other hand, if you look at how David Tepper kind of has been operating the last 2 or 3 seasons, how can you really feel safe? David Tepper in the last 2 seasons has let the franchise quarterback go. He's fired Ron Rivera, and he's let go of Marty Hurney. And all of those decisions, at least to some people, and I'm not saying this is really the truth, man, but all those decisions seemed a bit hasty to a lot of people. And I just would wonder how a potential GM looks at those rules and say, well, damn, is the first draft pick that I missed, am I out the door too? You know what I mean? If I'm a GM, of course I want some type of security. But then on the other hand, you look at how much Matt Rule is getting paid, and you're like, well, I could also get my money too. So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors to look at, man. And at the end of the day, if I'm a GM and if they have me in the interview room, it's obviously for a reason. It's obviously because I'm that analytical guy that they're looking for. I try my best to kind of mirror whatever Matt Rule wants to do as far as building a better program, and that's pretty much it.
So guys, I'm gonna read. Look, I was just jotting down some notes. I have a list of 5 guys. Tell me what you think. Nick Caserio from New England, Ed Dodge from the Baltimore, well, not the Baltimore. I'm old. The Indianapolis Colts.
Oh yeah.
Lake Dawson from the Buffalo Bills, Louis Riddick from formerly the Eagles, and Kevin Colbert of the Steelers. Somebody mentioned Brandon Beane. I just don't see that happening.
Brandon Beane just signed an extension with Buffalo last week to take him through 2025, so he's off the table. He would have been a great pick considering his history.
Bring him back home.
And look at what he's done with Buffalo. He essentially stole all our players. He went to Buffalo, stole our defensive coordinator, stole our players, and now they're going to win the division. Go figure.
He has the white Cam Newton.
Right. Rodney, give me the first name again because I screwed people's names up.
Nick Caserio from the Pats.
I said that because Nick Caserio, from what I've been reading, has been I guess he's the favorite at this very early stage in the search. And you can't argue with history. You can't argue with success. He comes from the most successful NFL franchise in the last 10 to 20 years, man. So you definitely can't argue with that.
Real team.
I'm sorry.
America's real team.
Yeah, right. The real America's team. So if I'm looking at that, man, I'm also a big fan of Louis Riddick. I know you're not, Rodney. I'm a fan of Louis Riddick because hearing him talk on ESPN, he seems to be the same guy that they're looking for as far as this analytical mind, this young guy who can bring some new ideas to the table. So that's why I'm also a fan of Louis Riddick as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the Louis Riddick train. I think it'd be great to see a young black GM in a position, like that. I was just gonna say, Chris, I can't. The thing about the Patriots is we know Belichick can turn water into wine. Look at what he almost did this season with
nothing.
Cam Newton and nothing. And the thing is the reason he had nothing is because their GM failed to set them up for the possibility that they weren't going to have anything. I mean, Cam Newton is a whole nother conversation, but it was like Cam Newton and us out there. There was nothing. New England had nothing after Tom Brady left. And that doesn't bode well, I think, for a GM's history. Of course, he's got all these Super Bowl rings, but I don't know if that was him, his personnel, and wheeling and dealing. And we've seen how New England, handles stuff. Like, if you ask for his extension, they'll just cut your ass. They don't get it.
Right.
Don't buy. So
even if you think about it, they'll go ahead and ship you to Oakland or something.
Right?
Like that.
Yeah. Plus, Bill Belichick is really the GM of the New England Patriots. He may not have that title, but
that is an interesting point, because what I was going to say was, like, if we may be making a bigger deal out of the drafting part than it needs to be, because if Matt Rule is going to still be the final voice in the room, so to speak, does it really matter what the drafting history is? If Matt Rule is going to be that guy, and then you got Cesario handling all the other stuff, then it may be a perfect fit. Maybe. We'll see.
So, guys, somebody interesting to me is Kevin Colbert from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He signed a 1-year extension last year. His contract's up after this year, and I think Tepper wants to pluck from that tree that he was on at one point.
Absolutely.
And, if you look at the Steelers, man, like, look, they rarely fail. Like, the drafting is A1. The development is A1 as well. So he would be somebody that I would highly be interested in. I think him and Tepper would be on the same page, but I'm just concerned of how Rule would mesh with that.
But here's the thing, and not to sound like a broken record, but at the end of the day, Matt Rule may have the final say so as far as who's the GM, because he's such a big key in all of this. You know what I mean? Again, man, Tepper gave him a lot of money and a lot of responsibility, and I just feel like whoever is the future GM, he's going to take a backseat to Rule. He's not going to handle the personnel stuff as much as we may think he is. You know what I mean?
That actually might be why we see someone like Kevin Colbert come in. He's clearly got some kind of rapport with Tepper. Kevin Colbert's been with Pittsburgh for literally 20 years. So, they know each other. And I think if he comes in to the situation and David Tepper says, hey, look, Matt Rule is going to be the guy, it'll be collaborative, but ultimately his call, I don't think Kevin Colbert is going to kick up too much fuss about that, honestly. What we've seen in the NFL, you win by copying winners.
Yeah.
Buffalo won the division because they said, we're going to model ourselves after Carolina Panthers, who modeled themselves after the New York Giants, who modeled themselves. So now we've got this guy from Pittsburgh, and he's like, okay, I'm going to model us after the Pittsburgh Steelers, which has probably been the most consistent team in modern NFL history besides the Patriots. And if it's one thing the Carolina Panthers have lacked, it's consistency.
Yes, sir.
Literally, statistically, analytically, everything, the most inconsistent team in the history of the league. I think Tepper wants to change that. So he says, who's the most consistent team? Pittsburgh. Let's model after them.
And let me say this, man. This is a very, very critical time for the Carolina Panthers for this reason. Look at the rest of the division. Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've pretty much just laid all their cards on the table and said, we want to win now. Now, meaning maybe it's this year or the next 2 years at the latest. You got a 42-year-old Tom Brady. So, of course, time is of the essence. This is probably Drew Brees' last year, okay?
Knows it needs to be.
Right. Matt Ryan ain't getting no younger. Julio Jones ain't getting no younger. So I say this is a critical time, man, because we may be in a prime position where we could really be running this division for the next at least 5 to 7 years. Could be, but we got to get our things in order now, man. This is right on. Right, this needs to be the time when we get our GM, coach, and owner all on the same page, so we can finally build some consistency.
Yeah, this draft is going to be super key.
Important.
Like I said, once all the old heads of the division fall off, if we don't have a guy in place, if we don't have a franchise guy, we're just gonna be wasting time. Whereas if we already got a guy that we feel like can lead the franchise, then yes, we're about to be in a very, very good position. This is such a key draft for the Panthers, and I think maybe Tepper felt like Hurney was going to screw it up. Maybe he felt like, hey, I don't want to leave this in Hurney hands. I know he's got a good draft record, but some of his other things, some of his other areas are flawed.
Yeah.
So,
now this is just strictly a rhetorical question, man. But I wonder if Tepper looks at like some of the draft picks that we got this year, and I'm obviously not talking about Jeremy Chin, obviously, you know what I mean. But I wonder is he looking at some of the other guys and saying, you know what, man, I'm really not happy with the way these other guys have produced. Man, I think we can do better.
For instance, go to 2019. Brian Burns, A1.
Right.
You traded up for Taylor Moton, who hasn't exactly worked out.
I mean, he's decent. He's been okay.
Not Taylor. Is it Taylor Moton?
Not Taylor Moton, man.
It wasn't Taylor Moton. It was Greg Little.
Greg Little. Yeah.
You trade up for Greg Little, who hasn't worked out at all, really.
Right.
He was injured all last year. He hasn't, frankly, looked that great.
Greg Little's getting playing time because Russell Okung just decided he wasn't going to play this season. That's basically it.
Another bust. And then you waste a third-round pick on Will Grier. Like that to me had to have been a Marty call.
Let me call an audible real quick because I've said this before. Speaking of Will Grier, I firmly believe. Now, we always want to make it clear that we don't have intel and we're not in the room, so to speak. So this is just speculation. I have always thought that Marty Hurney should not take the fall for Will Grier. I just firmly believe in my heart that was a David Tepper call. And I've listened, but listen to where I'm going with this. You saw the quote today where David Tepper said, well, if you don't have the franchise quarterback, the quarterback is always under evaluation. If you look at the Cam Newton situation, we all can see now that he really didn't want Cam Newton around. So he was clearly evaluating the franchise quarterback situation, which kind of led me to believe that they shot their load and drafted Will Grier in the third round. And I kind of believe that was a David Tepper call. I really do, man.
Yeah, I could see that.
Gotcha. So enough of this GM talk. So we got some news today that the Panthers didn't have a Pro Bowl selection. Give me your angry thoughts.
Oh my God, are you serious?
We were one of the few teams with no Pro Bowl selections. Of course, there won't be any alternates this year because the Pro Bowl won't be played, but we have no Pro Bowl selection. So Brian Burns just wasn't good enough to the voters.
It's hard for me to answer this, to kind of comment on this, because this is my first time hearing about it, and I don't know who made it in front of Brian Burns. I don't know who made it in front of Jeremy Chin.
Chase Young.
Sorry?
Chase Young.
You got to be kidding me, bro. Like, I'm speechless. Kaiser, please go ahead. I'm going to come back to me on this one, bro. What in the world?
Popularity contest.
Is Bleacher Report doing the Pro Bowl voting?
We say this a lot. You know, the Panthers aren't the Hornets. The Panthers have a lot more respect in the league than the Hornets do. Not just from the league itself, but from the fans and the media as well. I think people generally respect the Carolina Panthers, but I think this is one of those things where we got snubbed because the general consensus is that, well, the Panthers aren't a very good team, and you know they're from Charlotte. Statistically, I want to be fair to Brian Burns. He's had a great season, and if he were to play the rest of the season, he'd probably, which he should not, but he would probably finish in double-digit sacks. He had 7.5 last year playing at the outside linebacker spot. This year he moves over to defensive end and racks up 8 sacks so far. He probably would have finished with between 9 and 11, which generally is, to me, that's good enough to make a Pro Bowl unless you've got, you know, some monster ahead of you. But I think given that the Panthers defense was kind of slow to like get together and gel into a competitive unit, I think that hurt a little bit. It's hard. I feel like offensively, I feel like Robbie Anderson maybe had a case.
Yeah.
I feel like he was actually probably a bigger snub than anyone on our defense. He comes into a new system. Everything's new. Coach, quarterback, and still puts up 1,000-yard season. You know, I mean, I know it's tough when you got, you're always going to have guys like Julio Jones, you know, make the Pro Bowl. I know it's tough for wide receivers. There are 4 of those slots.
Kaza, stop being nice, man. You're too nice on this, bro. I find it very interesting how this comes after a weekend where Ohio State gets in the college playoff over Texas A&M. I just find that very damn interesting. And the point that I'm ultimately getting to is that when you have, I'm sorry,
Florida State isn't relevant.
Funny guy. So the point that I'm getting to is the media. It's like they have the guys that they're kind of gonna pick no matter what. You know what I mean? They're kind of like Chase Young was the golden guy before he even stepped on the field. He got the hype way more than Brian Burns ever would have. Brian Burns comes from a garbage Florida State program right now. Chase Young is fresh, you know, off of a, I guess, you know, a competitor in Ohio State. So I said to say, man, some of these media guys, I guess they have no real reason to pay attention to the Panthers nationally, but they do because the Washington football team is more of a nationally recognized brand. That is the only way I can even begin to think they would even pick Chase Young over Brian Burns or Jeremy Chin. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know the media loves to create a superstar. They feel like I hate to say this. When Cam Newton left, any star power or national recognition went with him.
He took the relevance with him.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. The Panthers could have been a playoff team this season, and the media would still be talking about how Cam is playing in New England. Every day when I turn on ESPN, they have like 5 minutes where they talk about Cam Newton, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Cam is Cam. We don't have anybody like that, and like you said, Chase Young was kind of groomed to be a star. He comes in, he goes to Washington, which is always in the media for the wrong reasons. I think that's. That essentially that was it. Brian Burns is going to get his, and I would rather him get his with a Super Bowl ring or in the playoffs. I think that the Panthers are on a much better path than the football team from Washington is. So, you know,
especially offensively, yeah,
exactly. Plus, the Pro Bowl in the NFL is.
You get a Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think players care about that accomplishment all that much. Being selected to an all-pro team is a much, much greater accomplishment.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, real quick, Rodney, before you ask the question, man, even though we're not playing for anything coming Sunday, now it makes this game a bit interesting because I want to see if Chase Young is worth that Pro Bowl vote now. Well, let's see who has a better game. Well, Brian Burns is probably out this Sunday, so there goes that, man. But at least we get to see if Chase Young is worth the hype. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's weird.
I was looking for revenge, man.
Statistically, it's not even close. Brian Burns' stats are way, way better than Chase Young's this season. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know anything about football.
We don't.
Yeah.
Football.
More sacks, more tackles for loss, more forced fumbles.
Hey man, Charlotte is not Washington D.C. Man, that's the only way I can rationalize it.
And it's going to look real bad because the Panthers are going to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got an interesting matchup. It'll be Chin versus Chase. I mean, hopefully Chase doesn't steal this Rookie of the Year vote.
Okay, I'll say this. Pro Bowl snub, I can live with that. But if Jeremy Chin does not win Defensive Rookie of the Year, the fix is in. And I'm just going shoot.
Leave it at that.
I'm gonna burn every media bridge out there. I'm just gonna scorch the earth. There's no way you can. I don't see it. I just don't see how Jeremy Chin is not the best defensive player.
Let me tell you something, man. If Jeremy Chin doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, my goal for that day is to get blocked by every national media's Twitter account. Like, if I don't get blocked by every national media account, then I have not fulfilled my purpose for that day.
Gotcha. So, guys, I hate to do this, but I have to transition to something a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Panthers legend Kevin Greene passed away today at the age of 58. What are some of your best memories of him in those early Panthers teams?
Salt and pepper, baby. Kevin Greene on one side, Lamar Lathan on the other. Man, that 1996-97 season was something to behold. Our second year in the league, and we're in the NFC Championship game. Playing against Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers, man. I really hate that we didn't win that game. It would have been nice to make the Super Bowl in the second season, but that season was really something special. They brought like this energy, to the Panthers, and Kevin Greene went on to. It was a short stint as a professional wrestler, and you could see it.
I remember that.
Energy with him, and it's great that for a short time we had a future Hall of Famer and a great teammate and NFL legend as the Carolina Panthers.
Man, Kevin Greene is going to be known as a Pittsburgh Steeler, but his short time that he was here with Carolina, man, I mean, he was just like a perfect fit. He was a perfect fit for the team. He was a perfect fit for the city. He was a guy that was often seen around town, man. He had this infectious personality, man. He just had this personality that was just bold and a little crazy and a little wild. He's a real funny dude, man. And it translated to how he played, on the field, man. He was, I say this in the most complimentary way, man. He was a wild, reckless dude on the field, man. He was a linebacker that was a little crazy, man. He was all over the place. He was just a really exciting guy on the field, man. And to Kaz's point, that season was magical, man. Of course, my best memory is when we beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. That was awesome.
Yeah.
It don't get no better than that.
Everybody, daddy was mad.
Yeah, everybody, daddy was mad.
We didn't just beat him either. We beat him up.
I mean, we beat him up. Him up. And Kevin Greene was on Troy Aikman's ass that whole game, which made it even better, man. But anyway, don't get me too excited talking about that, man. But we're just all gonna miss his personality, man. He actually did an interview on WFNZ not too long ago, back in March. Yeah. So, man, it's just we're gonna, the Charlotte community, even for the short time we had him, man, we're gonna miss him, man.
I mean, when I think of Kevin Greene, what he brought to Carolina was legitimacy. Like, In '96, he won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler here. I mean, I'm gonna say this, man. He helped change this to a football city.
No doubt.
He ignited the fan base here, and it's kind of sad that he will be remembered as a Pittsburgh Steeler more so, but he was pivotal to the foundation of this Panther team, along with Sam Mills and Capers and Kerry Collins and those guys. One thing that's interesting to me is he still maintained that connection to Carolina loosely. I saw Derek Brown tweet something that Kevin Greene was a mentor and kind of helped him, and it's just like he was our first round pick, man. It's so cool to see all those actual connections.
And I didn't know that. That came as a surprise to me. I had no idea Kevin Greene was still that closely connected with the Panthers. I really didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he was one of the first players really in Charlotte history to come to one of our teams. He was still in his prime. He was still an all-pro player, and he just came on a whim. I don't know how Polian pulled that off. Like, hey man, you want to come play for our crappy expansion team in their second season? He's like, you know what? Yeah.
Speaking of what's Bill Polian doing these days?
Call him up, man.
Call him up, man.
Look,
hey, dog, you want a job?
Look. You call him up. He was like, "Hey, you guys want to play quarterback? You're black." All right, let me quit. Let me quit, man.
Cut your hair.
But yeah, him coming over and really still being a dominant player for us in the short time he was here was a good memory. I also remember playing with him in Madden '96. That was the first Madden that had the Carolina Panthers and the Jaguars in it. And Kevin Greene was in the game, and man, I used to just rack up sacks.
Beat everybody up
with that dude. It was great.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap the show up today, man. Thanks everybody for joining on the whim with this exciting or terrible news, wherever you fall with it. Thank you. We just ask that you like, share, subscribe our content, and I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a wonderful week.
Peace out, y'all.
Any parting words, guys?
Oh, hey, y'all get y'all's powers?
Oh yeah. I got my power, man. Look,
I didn't go outside and stand in the moonlight or the Saturn light yet, but I'm about to do that right now. I get my power. So, quarterback for the Panthers.
Hey man, look,
I'm about to not do what Matt Rule says. I'm just going whatever play he calls. Be like,
you about to be a maverick out here.
Got my powers, man. What you talking about?
I'm actually going to transform my power to catch a basketball and give it to Bismack Biyombo. So I'm going to be charitable. I'm going to be charitable with my powers, man.
How you miss a LaMelo ball pass?
How you miss a LaMelo ball pass?
How you drop a LaMelo ball pass? Bismack, what you doing, man?
Hey, man, he's a millionaire. Hey, say nothing to him.
Who's taller, LaMelo Ball or Bismack Biyombo?
That's a good question. That's a good question. That is a great question. We're going to leave on that note. Poe, who's taller, LaMelo or Bismack?
Y'all take care. Have a good holiday.
So y'all be good, man. Merry Christmas, y'all. Peace out.